Here's a little song I wrote. You might want to sing it note for note. Don't worry. Be happy.
Don't worry, be happy. Welcome to Happy Naughts' very first podcast. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I'm Ryan Roth, and with me I have Matthew Parmenter.
Matthew Parmenter.
How's it going today, buddy?
Good. Excited to be here. Excited to spread some awareness about homelessness. This has just been something you and I have been, I don't want to say heavily involved, but a little more involved than I have been in the past and in the last couple of weeks here, and kind of opened our eyes to a lot of things that we'd really like to share, and hopefully can get some other people out and about making a difference, or trying to at least, because that's seemingly what we've concluded to be the most important part.
Yeah, definitely. So since we kind of got involved with the Gateway of Hope, we did the Coldest Night of the Year walk last week. Last week.
Last weekend. Good event. It was a great.
It was
event.
great.
I think they had couple hundred people, would you say?
They said around 200 people.
Yeah,
we raised around $20,000 just in Langley alone, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So since we kind of started, we all have our perceptions of homelessness, what causes it, and, why people can't get out of that kind of a situation. What has changed in your mind, or, what was your initial kind of view on it before we got involved with all of this?
I think for the most part, you see the people around, and part of you sees it and feels bad, but I think there's just a lot of ignorance in general towards it. It's you and I were discussing earlier, it's something we see every day, whether you're just kind of driving by and whether you choose to soak it in or not. And it's I think the biggest thing that it's changed for me, or what I've had the opinion about, is that there's not necessarily a lot being done, and there's more that can be done, and there's a lot more depth to it once you start looking in and learning about it, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not just people on the street anymore, is my train of thought. That's
I would definitely agree. I think my perception was something along the same lines, as far as it doesn't seem like much is being done. Downtown, it's a little different. You see the lineups outside buildings, you see the shelters and that. But out this way, it never really seemed like there was much being done. And, that's definitely not the case. But as far as, for me, my perceptions changed. I was definitely in the category of the, why don't these people help themselves? Why don't they just get a job? Why don't, it's not that hard. They're just lazy, or whatever those kind of preconceived notion and
judgments. I think a lot of people have that too, right?
Yeah.
And that's, part of the problem.
I think in some cases that could be the issue with some, but, as we're going to kind of get into, that's not really... that hasn't really been what we've found.
That's
from what
definitely
we've
not
seen,
what we found, yeah.
Working with Gateway of Hope, that couldn't be really further from the truth.
Yeah.
So right now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna play you guys. You wanna get into some?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Before that, for everybody, I just want to get, this is a quote from Canadian Homelessness Research Network, the CHR, and it's basically a definition of homelessness. Homelessness describes the situation of an individual or family without stable, permanent, appropriate housing or the immediate prospect, means and ability of acquiring it. It is a result of systematic or societal barriers, a lack of affordable and appropriate housing, the individual household's financial, mental, cognitive, behavioral, or physical challenges, and or racism and discrimination. Most do not choose to be homeless, and the experience is generally negative, unpleasant, stressful, and distressing. That's the quote, and that's when it goes into a little more depth of a definition, besides just those people you see on the streets. Mm-hmm. It kind of gives you a different aspect, that there's a lot of other reasons causing this. And we were just going over, in Canada, there's 235,000 people that experience homelessness per year. As many as 35,000 per night, 13 to 33,000, pretty wide variety, are chronically or episodically homeless, and up to 5 to 10,000 people per night unsheltered. So these are the people you're
staggering numbers.
It's pretty incredible when you consider, you look around and think of all the different things we have and the places there are to go, and there's still this many people that are in that situation, and 47% of those are males from 25 to 55, and harder 20% of that is youth from 16 to 24.
The youth one is the one that gets me, because like in some places, at Langley included, there's nowhere for youth to stay. Gateway of Hope doesn't take in youth.
Yeah.
There's no shelters for the youth in Langley, and that's sad.
Yeah, you just kind of hope that they have somewhere to reach. And important thing for people to remember is 1 in 5 of these people have a severe mental illness, and that's I feel like a lot of us can relate to somebody that has a mental illness, and they're lucky to have family and friends around, or somebody that's caring, supporting, and helping them get through life. And I think one thing we learned at Gateway Hope was there's a lot of people that don't have that.
Yeah.
We take for granted that if I lost a job and got hurt, I got a room at my parents' house. Yeah. I'd have a room at a friend's house. And we always have that place to go.
We're going to play an interview I did with Brenda, who was our contact at Gateway of Hope later, and she put it really well. At any given time, she had, and I would include myself in the same category, 100 hands reaching out to help. And that's just not the case. And we'll get into that a little bit more later on in the podcast. But what we want to do now is... I did include it in the interviews that I did in Gateway of Hope. I talked to a guy named Jared, who is, what we look at as the kind of success story, someone who made their way through the program and is now helping other people who were in his situation, who are in his situation now where he was a couple years ago. So we'll play that clip for you, and we'll come back in and we'll discuss it. Okay, so wherever you feel like starting.
Okay, I'm a shelter worker here at the Gateway of Hope. Came here about 6 years ago. I have my own kind of path of homelessness that I came from. 2005, I was homeless. I was homeless for basically about 2 months, but and if it was enough for me to kind of get to that bottom of
2 months, and you
yeah,
that's amazing.
I have something to compare it to.
Yeah.
I wasn't always that way, right? It was a lifetime of bad habits and kind of like all amalgamated into this short time frame, right? Where it was like within a week, and like all of these, years of bad habits kind of built up into losing my car, losing my job, losing my place to live, and due to drug addiction, and brought me to the place where I was homeless, right? I wasn't aware of any kind of social services, of really any sheltering services. I did use the shelter in Abbotsford, however,
okay.
It wasn't like a Gateway of Hope where there's quite a substantial amount of aid that's available. Right?
What were the differences? What did they kind of lack?
At that point, they didn't really engage you at all.
Okay.
You come in and you stay overnight, and you get a shower and a meal, but
yeah.
They didn't really try to.
So the same thing kind of Dale was saying was, they talk, they come here, you come here, and they talk to you and listen. And
and we try to sit with the individual and see what we can do to try to help them, right, get out of the situation that they're in. And at the shelter at that point in time, they weren't doing anything like that, right? So you had to sign up every day. So you had to leave throughout the day.
Okay.
You're out in the rain. And then you only get like 5 days out of a calendar month in the shelter. And then if you've never been there before, you get an extra 5 days. Just but you got to line up every day. So it wasn't really very helpful for me. Yes, it gave me food and it got me out of the rain for a few days.
That's what I always kind of envisioned with these, because what you see downtown where I work is the people lining up and waiting to get in.
Exactly. So our facility isn't like that. Once you're in, you're in. Unless you don't follow the rules of the shelter or whatever, right? Or do something pretty substantial to get asked to leave, right? But,
exactly.
Once you're in the shelter, you're in. You can stay for 30 days is the guideline that we go by, and so it's not like one of those daily kind of line up things, right? But Yeah, I mean, so I was homeless for like 2 months. I mean, I ended up getting into a recovery program here in Langley, and that's actually what brought me to the area. From Port Coquitlam originally, and so I actually it was a year-long program. It was a place called Wagner Hills, a Christian discipleship program that focuses on not necessarily. A lot of secular programs kind of focus on the chemicals of the drugs and all this kind of stuff, like what they do to your brain and what they do to your body and all this kind of stuff, and which is good. I mean, what really helped for me was this program and really getting down to the hard issues of what led me to those decisions in the first place, right? Which was I felt like I was abandoned and let down by my parents as a child, and led me to that, seeking acceptance in all the wrong kind of places, right? So, but I ended up staying in that program for 4.5 years and giving back. I managed their intake office for 3 years, and then after that was over, and time was kind of getting to an end there, right? I mean, I was living on site and working there, and then I ended up getting the job here when they opened in 2009, and I've been here since.
So what are kind of the biggest positive you take away from working here, and I'm assuming helping out people who were in your situation?
I mean, sometimes that's kind of hard to answer sometimes. I mean, we do see a lot of the same people. A lot of the time, and that is kind of just the way that things go. But I mean, honestly, like what the positive things that I can take from it are those few people that are very grateful, and just from the bottom of their heart, just thank you for the help that they've gotten from here, right? And can see even like the small things are a good thing for them, right? Some people take things for granted and aren't grateful for the smaller things, right? Of just like having a place to stay and having a meal that you don't need to wonder where your next meal is coming from, right? So for me, it's just that simple. Just somebody who's grateful, and that you can see from the bottom of their heart that they're just happy to be somewhere, and that just that you listen, like you were saying earlier, about how that's different. We engage the guests and listen to what they have to say, and doing an intake. I mean, I've been told numerous times that people are just grateful that you're listening to them.
Talk to them, That seems to be the common theme.
So I mean, they just want to be heard, and sometimes they're not given that, right?
So in that you said there was 2 months that you were. Do you remember a specific point where you decided, all right, I'm gonna get into the program now?
Yeah, it wasn't even my doing about trying to get into that program. It was actually a friend of mine. But I remember it wasn't even a tent that I was staying in. It was actually one of those sun shelter things with all the legs on it, so it didn't even have sides on it, right? And like I'm like on the banks of Pitt River in Port Coquitlam, pretty close to the train bridge, and like it's basically just mud. And I'm like, it's February, it's March, I'm soaking wet, and I just started crying, and I just can't do this anymore. And I said, God, I'm like I need to get out of this. That's all I said. It wasn't this big lengthy prayer, this huge aha moment. It was just, I can't do this anymore. And the next day I went over to my friend's house, who I lived next to for almost 25 years, and she was dating the grandson of Wes Wagner, who was the founder of Wagner Hills Treatment Program, and she kind of facilitated getting me there. So, and then I went there almost like 2 days later. Yeah.
Awesome.
So,
That's it. That's perfect.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. No, you're welcome.
So that's nice to hear when you hear those kinds of. I mean, it's possible. What that does is it shows you it's possible.
It does show there's a possibility, and somebody believed in it, and it's it kind of is an answer. And I know that was one guy, but he was aware of his situation. He knows he hit a rock bottom. He knew he went down the wrong path, and I don't know if that's because he understands those things now opposed to before. But to get started, he would have had to A, seen that there was things going wrong with his life, and B, whether he reached out or someone encouraged him to go. There was somebody there to make a difference for him. There was a program intact, and there was somewhere to go.
But like he said, he wasn't even aware of these kinds of programs at first.
Yeah,
right?
the Abbotsford Shelter. I mean, you go in for a shower and a a meal and get in there and get those things done. But again, something like that's only going to get you so far. If my car's broken down and I walk into a shop and the guy's like, yeah, it's broken.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, cool. Like,
That doesn't
help you at all. It's not going to solve your problem, right? There needs to be other things happening for someone to change their life.
What I don't know what you do, but for me, what I take away from that most of all was that he really emphasizes the biggest help to him was somebody engaging with him, somebody having an honest conversation with him, being open without judgment, not just telling him he's an addict and he needs to stop doing whatever it may be, drinking alcohol, drugs, whatever it could be.
Yeah,
they realize, and he touched on it. He said it was that he felt neglected and a couple other things that led to him getting so deep into that world.
Right.
And he said he's seeking acceptance in the wrong areas because he was battling his own demons. And
felt abandoned by his parents, and
we forget that. And that's, I talked about this with Brenda after our recording, and we'll play my interview with her in a bit. But what bugs me so much, I mean, I'm pro weed, I'm pro whatever, but what bugs me about this culture, which is starting to shift, where we demonize the use of drugs. What bugs me about it, and I don't care what your opinions are, if you like them, you don't, you think they should be legal, not be illegal, everybody has their opinion. The biggest issue for me is it takes the focus away from the actual problems. And like talking to Jared, the problems are way deeper than a substance.
They are.
And that's the part that really gets to me.
This is something we talked about a little bit earlier as well. And, I've looked into a lot of different addiction problems. And the biggest main cause of these things for people is feeling loneliness and like no one's there. And reaching out to drugs and getting in that position. It's just all snowball effect. You're going through these problems in life, whether it's mental health, family. There's a list. There's a list of different things, but it puts someone onto the path where they're getting into something they shouldn't be. You slowly lose things in your life one by one, whether it's people or possessions.
Yeah.
And then you end up in a case where you're on the street with nothing, nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And what do you do from there?
Mm-hmm.
What do you do? And it's I think that's a lot of the case of the things that we see on your drive down East Hastings. But something like that, there's a community formed there, so that's their place to go. Mm-hmm. But a guy like that in Langley, Abbotsford, I mean, it's tough. Even the night of the walk that we did with the Gateway of Hope, and when you guys had walked ahead, and I was just off doing photography things, I had a conversation with. I didn't even catch his name actually. I kind of feel bad. We tried to meet up to have an interview at a later date, but a thing for him was. Like homelessness isn't a crime. Mm-hmm. These people aren't committing a crime by being on the street. Mm-hmm. It's not against the law on them. If they have nowhere to go and someone's telling them, hey, you can't sleep there. Okay, well, where do you think I'm going to shift? Yeah. I'm going to shift to the next park where there's no police or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So it's just kind of a revolving circle until you can get into the support or people caring that you need to help adjust this, right? And I mean, a lot of the different homelessness problems, I mean, there's inability of people to pay rent, it's conflict and abuse, there's alcohol and drugs, there's mental disorders, foster care programs, people coming out of jail, immigration.
Yeah.
Like the list is endless on different things that we've all had the privilege of avoiding.
Yeah.
Or, maybe not necessarily avoiding, but it's never led us down.
We'll get into that. Let's play. I interviewed another girl, and it touches on what you just said about abuse. Another factor that can lead to people being without a home. So we'll play another quick clip, and then we'll get into that what we have and don't realize nobody else or these people struggling don't have that. So here we'll play this clip, and then we'll jump right back in. So first question I wanted to ask you was, what brought you to Gateway of Hope, or did you start with a different program
What
like
brought me here
this?
was volunteering in the kitchen.
Okay.
And from there, I did the cook's training program.
Yep.
Graduated 2 years ago. And I live here now.
How long was the cook training program?
For me, it was 7 months because my brother passed away. And I needed that month off just to get my head wrapped around it. And
What? How did you hear or find out about this place?
how did I find out about it? A friend of mine actually told me about it. She said you should look into it if you like to cook, obviously, and you'd be a perfect fit into the kitchen. So I checked into it. I liked it. I like the people here.
Mm-hmm.
I like working. I like volunteering here because of the people.
Dale, are you comfortable commenting on your time in the Opportunities Program?
Yeah.
Okay.
What made you decide to get into the program to start? What obstacles were you going through that kind of brought you to?
Well, my mother passed away. She died of breast cancer, and she always told me I should go and do something culinary because it was my passion. I loved to cook, and I was really good at it. I got really good marks in the program. The obstacles that brought me here was my roommate at the time. She was really abusive, and I just couldn't take her abuse anymore. So I, asked if I could move in, and it's been a struggle. I've had roommates that I've disagreed with, but it's communal living, and you make the best of it.
Mm-hmm. How long were you struggling before you came and decided to come here? And
How long was I struggling? I would say about 3 or 4 months. Just being verbally abused by a woman that had no reason to do it.
Do you remember a specific kind of turning point that made you go, all right, I'm going to enter this program?
It was my mother. When my mother passed away, and I was addicted to drugs. Heroin was my drug of choice, and I didn't want that anymore. I wanted to do something with my life. I knew I was capable of doing something positive with it. So I went into rehab and went into recovery and.
In what ways do you feel that Gateway of Hope really kind of helped you and pushed you along with it?
They listened to me. They encouraged me. Whenever I had a problem, I could talk to people here, and they would understand it. They wouldn't judge me on it. They would understand where I was coming from.
They really talked to you and helped you work through.
Yeah.
So first, I just want to say, when I say in that clip, this place, I'm talking about the Gateway of Hope. We didn't really touch on that. These interviews kind of went in a different order, but same thing with Dale. She just like we said with Jared, she wanted to do more, and she knew she was capable of doing more, but she was in a situation that was hard to get out of. And this one, it was abuse.
Do you think a lot of these people feel that maybe they're in situations that there is no hope or they can't get out of, so they don't even try to reach for it?
Well, I think it's even more than that. We talked about with ourselves having 100 hands reaching out to us, support systems out the ass when we need something, and not even so much that, just growing up with good friends and people around us to talk to us, and when we have problems. And we forget that a lot of people don't have that. They don't have someone to turn to when they need to just talk or vent, or they don't know what to do or where they can turn to for help, right?
It's unfortunate. It is. And it's something that's, even in the darkest times of life, I've had people to turn to, so I can't really comprehend what it would be like to just have nothing.
Exactly. And I think about it all the time. I mean, I I haven't had to struggle at all. I mean, I've done things that I have to struggle with and learn, and you know, like podcasting, right? But that's not even not even close to the same type of a situation as growing up with, you know, and I talked to Brenda about this growing, and that'll be in the later clip, but growing up with shitty parents is something that a lot of people deal with. And me and you, we talked to our moms on the Marathon podcast. You know, we had everything we needed.
Yeah, we definitely did. My mom and stepdad, right? They took care of us our whole life. They were always there.
And a lot of these people are dealt the shit hand from the get-go, and they're basically expected to just work themselves through it.
It is, and that's one of the biggest things that I've been reading a lot about too is, you know, people put so much time and energy into fixing homelessness, but a huge step of it is prevention. Mm-hmm. A huge step that gets, I don't want to say necessarily neglected, but it seems people's awareness to being focused in a prevention aspect opposed to just solving the end result is becoming something more prevalent.
Yeah.
On the
it is.
Really
got that toilet paper.
Yeah. Yeah. Prevention, and that's something I'd like to explore more personally in the future.
Yeah.
You know,
that's a big argument right now is, you know, what is the best direction or best route to take as far as trying to end or minimize the problem.
Yeah.
And we talked, and I talked to another guy, John, and that's kind of, you know, part of what he, you know, we talked about in that conversation. I kind of had a different view, and, you know, we both discussed this
housing first
initiative, and so why don't we play that interview with John, and we can get into the issues that we kind of have with, you know, do you focus on just providing places for people to stay, or continue to provide shelters for people to be at, you know, just temporarily? So we'll play this interview with John, and then we can kind of jump into that.
Yeah.
Go-to media guy?
No.
Thanks, John, for doing this.
Yeah, you're welcome. Your name?
Ryan.
Ryan. Sorry, you did say that. Okay.
So how long have you been working with Gateway of Hope?
I've been at the Gateway of Hope since its inception, 6.5 years ago. I guess inception in heart and idea a few years before that, but inception in building, you know, 6.5 years ago.
The idea to put this place.
Yeah, I'm sure that seed was planted long before I arrived.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
You know, from the day that it opened, I've been working here. Yeah.
What brought you here? What was were you working at another program similar to this and transferred, or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like most people, our journey here is it can be different, right? You know, I think a lot of us that end up here believe you know, God, you know, as a part of God's journey has brought us here, you know, or our life journey, or, you know, our history, or what have you. But for me specifically, I was working in outreach in the Wally area, and some people I was working with doing ministry street outreach from there knew the gentleman that was in charge of this facility, and just connected me with him, and yeah, it was a good natural next step for me. I had recently been out of Miracle Valley Treatment Center.
Okay.
Probably about 2.5 years previous to that. And this was a good natural next step in my journey.
How did the treatment center that you were at differ from what you guys do here? Were they basically the same kind of a program?
So, no, not really. So what we do here is a lot of times we're the first initial contact for people, right? For services, just on an immediate needs basis or emergency needs basis. Whether it's the emergency shelter, maybe whether it's a community meal, maybe it's just a community outreach that Andre is doing through family services. You know, we're just a lot of first contact for people. And then from there, hopefully if someone wants, or if someone's ready, or if someone identifies some areas that they want help in, that we can address them. Sometimes that's treatment, sometimes
Yes.
it's, sometimes it's just a family service of some type.
So that was a place that someone would go from here,
Yeah.
possibly, if
Yeah.
that was what was necessary for their recovery.
Yeah, so that's a big part of people that work in the shelter.
Yeah.
They'll refer people to treatment centers and what have you. And then we, in the building, have a second stage transitional housing that I'm a part of. So I started in the shelter,
Okay.
worked there for 4 years, and for the last 2.5 years I've been working in our transitional housing department. And what that is, it can mean different things for different people. So for people coming out of treatment, it can be second stage housing for them.
Okay.
Maybe people coming out of the shelter, it can just be a piece of respite, or just a moment out of the chaos, so they can have some stability to help themselves take that next step. And maybe with a population shifting that we're helping, if it's seniors, it could just be a place for them to help take their next step too. So it's different for everybody. For
Right.
someone coming out of treatment, we might be focusing on relapse prevention, and and their goals and what they do daily would be different than versus someone who's maybe just here, had a longer stay in the hospital, lost their housing, and might and needs supportive housing of some type, and that can take 4, 5, 6 months to put into place. So then they could be in our transitional housing while that happens, and what they do each day would be different than what someone else does.
Right,
And
so
that's the
it's
beauty of the program upstairs.
Very personalized.
Yes, it's
not
individualized.
kind of a one-size-fits-all program. It's, you're really taking the time to figure out what needs that
Yes.
each person has
Yeah.
to move forward.
Yeah, so we're not just your classic second stage,
Right.
but we're so much more than that. And whether, just recently we've had a new philosophy called First Steps, and that's to help people that may be a little bit more chronic, that maybe just need that seem to be circulating through the shelter system, and that would maybe with a little extra support, a little extra stability,
Push.
that they can help take that next step to where they need to go. And at the end of the day, what we want to do is just give people an opportunity, right?
Right.
And whether it's just removing themselves out of I think the word chaos sometimes, and that in itself is worthwhile, I think. So,
Providing the tools
Yeah.
needed to.
yeah, and just seeing what that next step is for someone. I don't know. So I think part of what we do is trying to identify what they need and helping themselves identify what they need as opposed to imposing what we think.
What
they
you
need,
think they should do. Yeah, that's-
and that's the whole philosophy change, I think, from what we did 15 years ago to what
Right.
we're doing today. Right?
Great. It's a great philosophy. I like
Yeah.
with almost anything. I think that's a great way to look at things.
Mm-hmm.
So when there's always going to be times where it seems like things just aren't getting better, or it seems like there's no end. What kind of things do you think of, or what do you remind yourself of if you're getting overwhelmed, or you feel kind of start getting those feelings to say, no, we are helping. Things are going well.
Yeah, so we are helping, and things
Yeah.
are going well,
Yeah.
and I do see the difference. And sometimes we just want to model hope, because I don't know when that switch is going to flick, if we can say it that way. I know for myself, at one point, at one time, I thought, why not me? I was 37 years old, and I'd been through a life of drug addiction, of gang activity,
Yeah.
and I got to a point where I was, faced with help again, and at some point it's like, okay, why not me, right? So we do have people that seem to be trapped and in a cycle, and homelessness is a rut,
Yeah.
really, and it's dangerous, and we recognize that, and and it might not be their time this time, but at some point they might say to themselves, well, why not me? And maybe I can do this. And so we want to be modeling that. We
Right.
want to be showing people that there is a way.
Yeah.
And I think we have that here consistently on a daily basis, whether it's from staff members or from just what we do here, that someone can maybe come to the place where they say, maybe it's my turn, maybe it's my time. And so I think we have to remember that. And I think we have those stories to remind us of that. So I believe in hope. So I don't give up on hope. I believe in hope, and I see hope. I see hope daily when I come to work. And I think anybody that comes here, usually as a worker, I think for ourselves, we want to make change in our community. And we do that on an individual basis.
Right.
And even though it seems that maybe things aren't changing, I think the Gateway of Hope, since it's been here for 6.5 years now, has the stories to tell to say, no, things are changing. Yeah, people's lives are being changed. As a whole, it doesn't seem to be changing, but I know individually people have been changed through this building, and that in itself continues to give us the will and the desire to do what we do.
Yeah, just takes one success story to kind of keep you as long as.
Yeah, well, I don't choose. I try not to build myself up off of people's successes or tear myself down off their failures, because I don't always know what that is for someone.
Right.
I know sometimes just walking alongside someone in their moment when they're not doing that well, that in itself means something.
Right.
Just in that moment. So when I worked in the emergency shelter, I just felt it was a privilege to be with someone in that moment. And what came of that, I know didn't matter, because at that moment it meant something. It was very important for that to happen, and we do that daily too.
Right.
I know sometimes we want to see,
right.
To see someone change and see someone. See that our work does something, but I think our work does something even without that, though, and I think that's very important.
I think you touched on something. Everyone's success is different. What every person is going to look at as a success, day to day, week to week, month to month, is going to be different.
Yeah. And I think one thing that we key in at the Gateway of Hope is that everyone deserves dignity too. No matter whether they're going to change or not, whether they're going to. Whether they're still in the situation that they're in or not, they still deserve dignity, and then we want to be able to provide dignity to that sector of society, and that's where we're here in the community, to do that, to give people dignity, to give people hope, to help people when they're ready to take that next step, and be okay with it if they're not.
Yeah,
I think that's a key too. Right?
That's great. So the thing for this podcast, one of the kind of main things we're going to be touching on with homelessness is, issue like what contributes. We're going to do, we got to research.
Okay.
We're going
Good.
to what contributes to it, and one of the main things we're going to kind of be discussing is, can there be an end? Is there a possibility that we could put an end to homelessness,
Interesting.
or is it just something that needs to be managed, and we just need the help there for the people who want to do what they can to better their situation? How do you feel about that? Do you feel like it's something that you can get to an end, or do you feel like it's just it's something that's about minimizing and managing?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's a couple of different ways we can. I would ask you that question, actually. I'd be interested to hear what you have to say about that.
Personally, I don't think it's something that you can really put. I just think because of people, it's a cycle, and I think that as long as there's places like this to help, I think that's the most important thing. I don't think it's something that you're going to see an end to just because there's too many people in the world, and there's too many circumstances that can contribute to it. I guess is kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, so it's a societal issue
Right.
more than an individual issue.
Right.
And I think society kind of creates itself. And much smarter people can speak to that than me. As a Christian, I know that Christ said the poor will always be among us. I don't know exactly what that means, but I know that at some level the poor will be among us, and there are ways that we are supposed to act and give and share within that, and I think he models that.
Yeah.
So I think for the end, I know that's a key word to going to end homelessness.
Right. It's a loaded word. For
Yeah,
sure.
I see some problems with that. Could we build a bunch of housing and house people? I think they've done that in other societies and in other places, and that creates its own issues within that, and brings poverty and stuff within that. So like I say, it's a societal problem, and it's more a reflection of society than the individual.
Right.
And society's at a place, I think, where Yeah, we recreate that, but that's okay, because what I think is important is it comes back to dignity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it comes back to how we view individuals, and so I don't have an answer to that.
Like Jared said, too, you touched on it's about the story behind and getting to the root and helping that way. It's not just about creating places for people to stay,
Yeah.
because that's not going to really solve the problem.
Yeah, I hope we do more than just that.
Right. Exactly.
And people don't just want that. They don't just want 4 walls and a roof. They want community.
Dignity. They want
dignity. They want they want to be a part of something. So just if we offer people 4 walls and a roof, they might not actually necessarily take it.
Right.
Is my experience.
Right. Awesome. That's. So yeah, like people, if you're just going to offer them 4 walls and a roof, and I think that's kind of what the way I look at it. Some people aren't necessarily.
Is that how you look at the housing first?
That's how I look at the issue, I guess, as a whole, and it ties into what I was talking with John about as far as dignity. Is if you're just throwing someone in a house, I think somewhere, in their conscience, they're going to feel. Unfortunately, they're going to feel as if they're just, even though that's what it is, it's going to feel just like charity, and they're not going to feel too good about it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you can put someone in a home, but it's not going to change their character or give them passion about life, right? I mean, I'm sure a good percentage of the people are going to be appreciating having somewhere warm to sleep at night, but what's the next problem, right? I mean, you still got to get into the regular aspects of life, whether it's, working isn't for everybody, having jobs isn't for everybody, but I mean, families, sharing happiness, having something to be passionate about, and having something to do almost, you know what I mean? Like, it's...
Yeah. So what is your kind of take on it? Because recently they've kind of shifted their focus from these short-term shelters, as far as the government and federal government, where they're placing their money, they're focusing now more on this housing first initiative. So what do you kind of take away from
again, if they're just trying to take people off the streets, and I think there's like a massive epidemic with homelessness, that this is a problem. It's a very now solving problem, but in the long run, it's definitely not necessarily. And I mean, there is no shortage of government financial, and I know they are asking for more, but at like 2014, there was $238 million put towards this, right?
Oh, $38 million. Yeah. Wow.
And it's, there's incredible amounts of money that they're doing what they can to support people, but it's, it's direction. Where's it going? Is it going to the right place? Who's deciding this? We were talking earlier about safe needle sites, and, that'll help a little bit, but...
all that does is it keeps the disease rates down, right? And I get it.
Yeah, it helps out for emergency services, medical stuff later. Those are taxpayer dollars. They had another thing I read here. The annual cost of homelessness in Canada in 2008 was approximately 5.5 to 7 billion.
In Canada?
Yeah, in emergency services, organizations, and nonprofits.
Wow.
So... these are all things that are, if the government's putting in $238 million a year, a lot of this is coming from,
and it's costing them $5 billion. So, I guess why not?
Don't you think there's a bit of a more invest in this now rather than having to pay later?
Well, I guess what I look at and what I take away from it is I'm not disagreeing that having permanent housing for the homeless. I'm not arguing that that's not better than just, temporary shelters.
Right.
100%. That's I think that's going to be even in the long run. I think that's going to work out better. But I just feel like the focus needs to be more on helping these people with the issues that have put them in that situation.
So this kind of goes back to the preventative
side of things. And from what I've read on it, that is a part of this plan, is to provide these kinds of services. But I just feel like the emphasis really needs to be on the mental health side of things.
It's definitely a huge chunk of it, and that's kind of what we were saying before. They have I mean, there's different levels and structures and types of homeless, right? And it's if the invested money or what people are doing isn't going, but if you're a regular day guy going to the mall with your girlfriend looking for something to buy and you see a guy sitting on the bench, your initial thought is going to be, you know, there's a guy I'm walking by. You're not going to sit down and be like, okay, here's my checklist. Is he drinking? No. Is he shooting heroin? No. Maybe he's got a mental health issue. Should I sit down and go talk to him? Where in your thought can you put a preventative program into problem? Because I mean, we know all these different things lead to homelessness, but what lines drawn saying that, like, oh my God, these people are all at risk of being homeless?
Well, I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's so much about. And I think I talked to Brenda a little bit about this, but I don't know if it's so much about the preventative side. I think she mentioned something along the lines of, you know, you got to try and reach them when they're young.
Right.
But like you said, you don't know who you're trying to reach, who has those kinds of issues at home. You just that you can't do that. It's just not possible, you know, unless you're talking about like the Big Brother and having cameras and like you monitor everybody. That's just not possible. I guess the way I look at it is focusing on the programs side of things that like a Gateway of Hope has, where they're welcoming you in.
Right.
They're talking to you openly. Their judgment's not there. You're giving them dignity and you're allowing them, like John was talking about, to work through it in the ways that works for them.
Because it's the support they need, right?
Exactly. You're not going to prevent people from having shitty parents. You're not going to prevent people from having shitty upbringings. But what you can do, and this is where that $238 million to $5 billion, let's skew those numbers a bit. Bump that up to $1 billion on the one end, and use that money to really promote the service programs.
Yeah.
Give people and advertise it and really make it known that this isn't something that you're going to be judged for going to. This is welcoming, open arms, come in and talk to people.
Do you think it'd be different if there was sort of an ultimatum from government funding? I mean, they have all these different short-term, temporary emergency service, safe needle sites. If the government-funded money was directed into either we're going to put you in a program like this to get you off the street, or we're not going to help you at all, do you think that would kind of force people's hand a bit?
That's a good way to go about it.
Would that kind of narrow the class too much, though? Like, I mean, if everybody's coming from a different background.
There are so many different backgrounds, and I think, I mean, you look at, say, single moms, right? That it can happen in that route. I mean, like they've started now with the drug testing for welfare.
Has it started in BC?
I believe it's either started or starting.
I'd love to see that. I mean, that's a super frustrating thing. Like when we're out working in Alberta, is all these jobs you're doing, you're getting drug tested for, and you're going through all these things, and you're losing $2,000 a paycheck to tax. To people not necessarily getting drug tested. And I mean, I understand paying tax, and we've talked about this before, and being blessed to make that money, but if that's going somewhere, it'd be nice to have more of a say on it than a vote every 5 years. Yeah. You know? And that's a big problem too.
I couldn't agree more. I think back to what I think John really like hammered home a main point, and this ties like into these programs that you'd like to see get started, is this why not me mentality. You know, like he was talking about, some people literally just need someone to walk beside them and talk to them when they're going through something rough. And the more you promote, I think, these kinds of facilities, I think that is going to lend a hand to really minimizing the problem more and more and more.
Yeah, it's definitely an issue. I mean, even with the program that they have at the Gateway of Hope, that fills up fast. That's, what was it, 32 emergency shelter beds?
Yeah, and then when it's really cold, they open up like another 40 in the one hall.
It's not a massive, it's a great thing they're doing, but it's still not a massive amount. And if that's the only one in Langley.
And there's nothing for youth.
Nothing for youth.
We touched on it a bit earlier, and that is the sad part. I mean, we've donated some of those backpacks that we did to the Encompass youth program in Langley. but that doesn't give them a place to stay.
No.
You know, that's somewhere they can turn to for help, but it's not a bed. And again, so that's the perfect example of the kind of program you want to see to help people through their problems. But it needs, and this is where, and again, I talked to Brenda about this, is you've got that catch-22 of you want to promote it, but you got to be careful with promoting it as well, because you don't want the wrong people coming forward. And why don't we play the interview with Brenda, and then we can touch more on kind of what's being done and what can be done, and end off on that note. Thanks, Brenda, for doing this.
Hi, Ryan. Nice to meet you.
So you're saying you have kind of a different perspective than John.
Yes. So before I started Salvation Army, I'm an event planner.
Right.
That's what I do. That's what I'm educated in. So I was working with a Christian university, working with their alumni, and I was moving on from that, and I needed a job. I found my job on Craigslist, which is odd because usually the Salvation Army does not post. They don't go to Craigslist, but my job is very unique to this ministry unit. So I was hired as the volunteer and projects coordinator. So I supervise about 150 volunteers over a 1 week period. They come in regularly, as well as I work with the community with fundraising events, and that's where my event planner. So that's how my kind of event planning plays in key. I'm a fairly organized, detailed person, so I fall well into the coordination piece.
Maybe you can give me some tips, because I am the complete opposite. So
yeah, I'm very detail oriented. But so I was fairly ignorant, and I'm fairly open about that. I was afraid of homeless people.
Yeah.
You know, I would walk down Robson Street as I was shopping, and then I would, steer clear and have my arms folded in case of pickpocketers. I was just a very frightful, worrisome person.
Like a lot of people.
Like many,
right?
And I did not know a lot about. It's not that I refused, but I wasn't interested in knowing either. I grew up in a middle class family. I grew up in a Christian home, so I was fairly taken care of. I grew up in a very close knit community.
Right.
So I wasn't exposed to much as a kid, but I started here, and it didn't take very long for my eyes to be opened about truly what the struggles are behind homelessness. And it's not just because they don't have a home. Right. So there's mental illness, there's addictions, there's frankly just bad decisions, like some have mentioned, like Jared. He did have the other things playing in, but there's some bad decisions. At the roots,
there's something.
Root, yeah. Whether you grew up in a different type of home, but there's plenty of people here that I've come across, guests or others, that they grew up just like me.
Right.
But then something happened, whether maybe a mental illness became more present for them, addictions, or bad decisions.
And I think a lot of people forget, like you said, grow up like you. So I'm a good family, right? Raised well. I think people, until you get to a certain age, I think we're kind of ignorant to it, the sense that a lot of people just get a crappy deal.
Yeah.
And they, from the get-go, are dealt, whether it's their parents, family members, whatever it may be, circumstances that just lend a hand to that path.
I've always had 1,000 hands reaching out to me, and some people don't even have one. They don't even have parents that are going to support them.
Right.
And that's what I try and teach younger kids that I do on the side, like kids camps and things like that. So I try to tell them, I know that you're getting raised just like how I was, but keep in mind that you need to hold on to this. Because if you let go, if you separate yourself from this community that you have, it's dangerous for you.
Yeah.
So anyways, volunteer and project coordinating, I deal with a lot of the volunteers. We do see all types of volunteers come through, some that have dealt with homelessness in the past, so they are coming with their own experience, and that's why they want to be connected with the Salvation Army. Some have grown up like me, and they've always, they've been blessed, and they want to give back. And then there's some that are currently dealing with mental illness, but maybe they need a little bit more purpose and a little bit of confidence. They can't work, so they come here and say, is there something that I can do for you here? Because I really want to get a job, but no one will let me do anything because of maybe some present manic, or whether they're dealing with bipolar or schizophrenia or just depression, anything.
Yeah.
So I just have a different point of view because I've learned about homelessness and about mental illness and addictions was not being face to face with it all the time. I work on the second floor. I'm dealing with volunteers, a lot more admin.
Yeah.
But it didn't take long for me to completely realize, like, wow, I was so in the dark about everything. And I just Tuesday I watched a 2-hour documentary on heroin abuse.
Wow.
And I found it so interesting, and my roommate didn't understand why. And it's like, because I'm surrounded by this every day. Even though I don't have someone shooting up beside me, I know how it impacts because I am surrounded, and I have to find, over 25 volunteers each day to deal, plus the staff that are here to help people.
Mm-hmm.
And I see the people coming in the doors and coming through. I have created relationships with various residents, maybe more in the transitional housing, that have decided to volunteer. So then I create a rapport with them, and I hear their story, and I walk with them for part of their journey, whether they're still journeying with me or they've moved on now in a better or worse place, because it is a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
There was a fellow that we wanted you to meet. He stayed with us. I've known him since the very beginning. He lived here when I started, and so when you live and work on the same floor, you get to know someone fairly well. And he did well. He had a great support. He was doing well. The day he moved out, he relapsed.
Yeah.
He just thought, I'm just going to get a 6-pack, and then I'll finish that, and then I'll be fine, because I'm good. I'm a support. But as soon as he had that, just a downfall from there. And he comes back and rises, and he can help, and he can be present.
Yeah.
And then he downfalls again. I don't think he would have a problem with me sharing that. I won't go into too much more detail.
That's a common kind of argument, that is it possible, you're hearing now they're doing studies on that, and is it possible to go just have a beer when you've had this problem for so long? Most people that doesn't seem to be the case. It just doesn't work that way. I mean, there's the odd case, I don't know if you know who Anthony Bourdain is. Yeah. But he had his issues for years, struggled through addiction, and now, he'll go have, I don't know if you watch the show.
I'm familiar with his.
So I'm sure that's kind of a rare case.
Well, I believe addiction is a mental illness.
Yes.
And it's a disease. So, yeah, some people can cut things cold turkey, and maybe it wasn't truly then playing into a disease addiction versus maybe I was doing it for a certain thing, and now I've found it somewhere else, so now I'm okay. Acceptance or whatever.
Yes.
Or numbing a certain pain that you've now gotten to the root of, you've dealt with it, and perhaps you can move forward. And even if you get to the root of the problem, I feel like they're still going to do it, no matter what. I think I was very judgmental when I was very ignorant about homelessness, and even working with fellow coworkers that have dealt with past, whether they were dealing with drug addictions or, they did some time because they got in trouble, right? So I think I was always, I'm not going to get in a car with someone who's been in jail. But releasing that prejudgment and treating everyone with dignity first. And obviously, hopefully there is no judgment, but, working with that person and understanding where they're coming from first. And that's what I take with volunteers as well, because I do have volunteers that want to apply, but they might not be completely stable right now. So I talk to them about what they're dealing with, and there's obviously liability we have to keep in check here, but if I can work with someone, I will try to as best possible. They have to be committed, a tiny bit because we rely on our volunteers very heavily here.
Sorry, go ahead.
I could talk forever.
So what are the biggest challenges you face when it comes to, finding volunteers and staff?
I think it's commitment and awareness. So firstly, awareness. Not everyone knows about Gateway of Hope, and since we need so much help in funding and in volunteers and just ground roots efforts with other people supporting us in general, it's hard that we can't just tell everyone and then everyone knows. How do we do it? How is it going to make an impact for them so they'll remember about us, or how would they, that they'll give a care about it? And I think secondly, some people feel that they give an hour of their time once a year. I feel good. I feel fulfilled, and I've done my thing, and that's great if that means what they means to them, and they've at least done that hour, And then there's people that have They volunteered every week, twice a week, for the last 6.5 years since
Yeah.
we've been open. And that person feels fulfilled doing that, you know?
Yeah.
So there's a commitment because we need a lot more of those 2 times a week, every week, for
Yes.
at least a year, 3 to 6 months. I spend time signing people up and placing them and assessing them, et cetera, and getting them all ready to go, and then they give me one shift, even though they've committed a lot more to me.
Yeah.
So I think it's about volunteers. If you want to give back, just try something out. If it doesn't work for you, that's fine. But there's a lot of people that are hesitant to even try, and I would encourage them to just do it, even if it turns out to be 1 hour for
Yes.
that year. But who knows what it could turn into?
People are scared regardless of what it is. People are scared of the unknown.
Yes.
So I mean, I started now just about 2 years ago with Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I was scared. It was
Commitment for them,
It
right?
wasn't even the commitment thing, but I think people, for me at least, and I've talked to a few other people, is you're scared that you're not going to help, or you're going to hurt, or you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
All of those questions that really, as long as you just show up and you care,
Yeah.
things are going to be fine. And that's one of the biggest things, like when I was asking Brenda how you try and convey to other people to get involved, is I just try to share and be honest about, I was scared. I was scared shitless. I didn't know what I was getting into. I didn't know if I was going to help, and I didn't know
Yeah.
if it was going to hinder.
Yeah.
But if you don't try, you're not going to know.
Yeah.
And again, speaking kind of what you were saying, is you just got to try, right?
I think some people are afraid of the environment here
Yeah.
as well. And
Yeah,
again,
it's
I
a
was
big-
too.
yeah.
When I first had to do my first kind of ride along with a volunteer, I knew they were stable, but they dealt with their own things. And I was afraid to go in the vehicle for 3 hours with that person
Yeah.
and go pick up donations. But then I found out what a wonderful person they were, and I talked to them about their past and where they've come from since then. And it's like, wow, this person, why did I ever judge them? Because I just wrote them off completely, and now I realize what a good friend that they can be to me.
A very
So-
high percentage of our decisions are based out of fear, whether
Yes.
good or bad. I think
Yeah.
people underestimate how much of what we do is based off of what we're afraid of or what scares us.
Yes, and so I'm actually transferring roles into fundraising coordinator.
Okay.
My next step in the next couple weeks, I'll be transferring into that. So it'll be a completely different, because there's always things we need. We need awareness, volunteers, but also the funds to operate. And so I'm moving from kind of a little bit still grassroots, because the volunteers are very practical, hands-on, and now I'm moving into, I gotta ask people for money.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a very interesting learning curve for me, but I'm excited about it because I believe in it.
Yeah.
Do I know how everything works in this building? No, but I know what we're doing here.
Yeah.
From what John kind of testified to as well. Like, I know that it's working, even though something else might work too, and it depends on what the person needs. And we're going to see if we can meet those needs, and if we can't, we're going to help them move to somewhere where they can. Some people try to apply here, and we tell them what it's about, and they go, I don't know. And then we go, well, maybe what about Grace Mansion, or there's so many other different, like, either transitional housing, or maybe there's treatment facilities that they need to go to, or maybe they think they need this, but they need something else. Maybe they just need support. So we talk about it through them. So for me, since I believe in it, I'm getting fairly excited actually to
Yeah.
go and tell people about it in a different manner than what I was doing before. And I'm bringing in dollars instead of volunteers.
Do you guys, for volunteers, do you guys advertise at all? Like, I know it's kind of a tricky situation, like you were saying, you want people to come in, but you also got to be careful.
About who we bring in. Yes, we do a little bit, and now that I am transferring out, because basically my job is being split into two, so there'll be a volunteer coordinator that will be focusing more on recruitment. How they're going to do that, I'm not sure yet, because we've been away from that for a bit, more for the sake of time and resources. So we will be, and we're going to have to kind of create a plan around how we're going to recruit, who we're going to recruit to, and who's our ideal volunteer. Is it the recently retired that kind of has an open schedule and is looking for a routine, but we're going to be one of their routines?
Yeah.
Or is it the student? In my experience, it hasn't been the student, because they're just, especially with the generation that's currently in the student role right now, we are very experimental. We want to try something, and we're going to live somewhere, and then we're going to live somewhere else, and we're going to work somewhere else. I've had 15 jobs, and I'm only 28 years old, whereas my dad's only had one job his whole entire life. Well, actually, that's a lie. He's had like 5. But In 50, 60 years, he's had 5 jobs.
Yeah.
By 25, I had 14, 15 different things that I've done.
People are searching for happiness right now for some reason instead of just being happy, I feel. I mean, I myself included in that. And I would assume even working at a place like this, it would help you with that.
I'm going to speak at a high school next week, and the principal reminded me that I'm speaking to the next generation of volunteers. And I go, that's scary because they're different than the ones I deal with now.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to reach them because I'm already out of that generation a little bit. I still hold on to a bit of the older folks where I do want to stay somewhere long and, security, stability. And these kids also want that, but they're willing to forego stability. They'll travel the world for a couple years. I'm a bit more of an old soul and I want to just stay. I'll travel, but then I want to stay. So it's daunting because volunteers, funds, awareness, having that in my hands, having a life that is broken in your hands is one thing, and then having the whole building that's hoping to help those people in your hands is a completely different perspective.
Yeah.
Some people might think it's less, but it's just a different type of stress / way to help.
Yeah.
In a way. I don't think I could work in the shelter, face-to-face, developing case plans. I think, I'm not strong enough for that.
Yeah, that's something that I looked into. I mean, I'm thinking about changing careers and social work and stuff like that. But same things. Is that something I can do? Is that something I can handle? I think we underestimate how adaptable we are as people, and it goes back to the fear thing, and you just got to try it. Jump in. If you can't do it, if you don't like it, jump out.
Exactly. I've jumped in and I stay in the shallow and in a different context.
So same question I asked John. How do you feel about homelessness as a whole? Do you feel like that's something that there could be an end to, or do you feel more along the lines of managing, minimizing, helping, doing what we can?
I am definitely way more on the side of managing and minimizing. Homelessness, again, it's not just that there's no home.
Right.
I don't really like the word homelessness, to be honest with you. Mental illness, there's not enough resources. There's a stigma around it, so people are treated less when they are dealing with it. Even if it's a CEO, as soon as he has a mental illness, he's put on a different scale than somebody else that was also on his level.
Definitely.
There's not enough resources for that, but to be honest, the thing that I'm most passionate about, and that's why I'm involved with a lot of kids' things, is that you need to start young.
Yeah.
Because if they don't have those supports then, even if you have the resources, if they don't have that instilled in them, the various morals, but also just, how to deal with peer pressure, how to deal with when you don't know how to make a decision. What are you going to do, especially if you don't have the right supports in your life. So I think having more resources developed towards youth about prevention is huge. I mean, it's not the only answer. There's 100 times 100 answers.
Yes, I thought, I guess must have talked to Brenda off air about that, but I guess the main issues that they are dealing with when it comes to their volunteers is that they can't just go out and put signs up and promote like crazy to get volunteers, because they still have to vet their volunteers. They still have to make sure that the people that they're bringing in aren't going to create more problems.
I think that's something you and I ran into when we were kind of looking for someone to work with. We were just not necessarily.
It's a lot of hoops to jump through, for sure.
Hoops.
They have to cover their ass, right?
Yep.
100%. And like she was talking about she talked about going to schools and talking to kids about volunteering, and a lot of their volunteers are retired or what have you. So and she's moving into a different field, so it's going to be someone else kind of coming up with these ideas of how they find their volunteers. But I think that's a lot of the reason we're doing this podcast as well, is because we want to help out as much as we can,
raising awareness
and getting I hate that raising awareness, because I think raising awareness is, people know that it's an issue, but getting the word out as far as, hey, get out and volunteer.
There's a different way to look at it or approach it, and I mean, you can go in so many different directions, and I know we've had so many different talks about whether it's politics or you're getting into this and how the government funding is going to be spent, and there's all these different things that homelessness is almost a spider web of different ways that can be affected or affect people, how it can be funded or not, all these different numbers that we read, but there's really a lack of solid data. You know, there's a whole lot of different stats, but nothing to really solve the problem. I don't think anybody has a general direction for it completely.
Yeah. And I just need, try to put out as much as I can. And talking to Bianca, I think I said Brenda in there by accident, but talking to Bianca, who didn't want to be recorded, but she volunteers at the front desk, and same kind of philosophy that I have on it, and trying to just relay your experiences and how it makes you feel to everybody and say, look, man, you're worrying about posting pictures so people think you're happy or you think you're doing well, and you think that's getting likes and follows are going to make you happy. Put the phone down and go and volunteer. I'm telling you right now, there's nothing that makes you feel better. I mean, we've talked about what we did with them even just that night and how good that feels.
I had a great time that night.
For myself, Big Brothers, and whatever it is, nothing feels better than when you see that you're helping or you're making a difference.
Yeah, and it's those little things that do make a difference for everybody. I mean, we can talk about money till the end of the day, but person-to-person connection, character building, feeling dignity, having someone there when you need it. And it's, just even the guys we talked to on the street, it's just, they appreciated somebody being there, trying to make a difference for them, and then just getting that piece of hope, knowing that there is
someone cares,
change on the horizon. I guess it's
things can get better.
It's good.
I mean, they need, what she said, 25 volunteers a day.
Yeah.
And
like we said, we did that tour. We know how based they are off volunteer help in there, and that's great. It cuts their funding down huge to have people volunteering. They don't need to raise as much money to try and do that. But I mean, it's still.
I think it was 80% of all their money is through
fundraising
and donations. I think they get allocated a little bit.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's all through fundraising.
Yeah. And that's, for anybody listening, for a local thing, this is a great program. And it's, whether it's donations or spending time volunteering, it's a good thing.
It really can. If you're one of these people, like I was talking about with Brenda, who is, searching for things to be happy with or to make yourself happy. If, a lot of people don't have that perspective too. I guess it's hard, I talk like that, but that's me personally. I have that perspective. I look at and analyze myself that way, and why are you doing this and this, or you're searching for, like Jared was talking about, he was looking for happiness, or he was looking for things but in the completely wrong way. And this is the right way, in my opinion. This is something that foolproof is going to make you feel better about yourself, and it's something that can completely alter.
It's a good cause.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts going back? Just, we were also previously discussing ways to fix this, and I think Brenda hit a really good point, was developmenting youth programs, in the preventative side, to really just better people's lives at a young age so things don't transform into a position like this.
Yeah, I think, like we touched on earlier, I think it can't just be like, I don't know what they mean when she talked about in that interview about preventative measures and her talking with youth. I don't really know what that entails, what you would do to prevent. I think, from the way I look at it, just having systems in place and putting the word out there that there's places you can go to talk to people. There's places you can go when you're struggling, and have those places. More of them. Like we said, there's nothing in Langley. There's Encompass, and that's it.
Yeah.
Basic for youth, that's it. And I completely agree. Is that developmental stage we go through between the ages of, I think it's like 6 and 12 or 6 and 14, like that shapes a lot of your of the path you're going to take as you grow, as you get older. And I think that's definitely where you want to try. And I don't know what you're going to prevent by talking and saying don't do this or watch out for this, or because the kind of stuff it just happens.
It's tough too, because kids are so young and you want to open their eyes to homelessness and all these causes. It's not something they're going to completely understand, because they're whether they're going home to a big house and a big dinner at night, they can't relate to it, right? So just
I think with a lot of things too, it's making them understand that they're not the only ones, that there are thousands of kids going through the exact same thing they are. And it's just like with AA or anything like that, where you get these support groups of people who are going through the same things as you. And I think something along those, like more programs, because I'm sure those programs are out there, more programs like that is, I think, a great place to start. Yes, I think the Housing First initiative is a good thing, but for me, the focus needs to be more on giving people an outlet to work through their issues.
Yeah.
And after that, we asked both John and asked Brenda about, can you see an end to homelessness, or is it something of just managing and minimizing?
Yeah, that was the
you
one.
Had my answer in there, but how do you kind of see that?
I don't know if there's necessarily an end to it, especially because of there's always going to be mental illness. There's always going to be drugs and alcohol. There's always going to be job loss. We never really know what's going to go on with our economy. But the one thing that Jared had said in your interview with him was, he looked at it like the way that things go, and I that bothers me to think about that, because if a lot of people every day have the mentality that that's the way things go, then you're not going to have, I'd like to feel like we're making a difference right now, but who knows if we really are. And this is our attempt at not having them being that's the way this goes. We're not turning a blind eye to it. We're trying to raise awareness. We're trying to be conscious. We're getting in there, and that's, if more people could spend, like what Brenda said, this just a small amount of time, or make that small adjustment in your life to be part of not turning a blind eye to what's going on. Those are the only really ways. And once you get people, I think, in that mindset, that's when you're going to start seeing more support systems and the 100 by 100 resolutions that she believes in. Or like, if everybody's got an answer for it, just put your answer forward and do something about it. Right?
Stop talking about it and start doing is, I think, a big thing. That's what bugs me about the whole awareness thing, that everyone raising awareness for bullying, raising awareness for this. You're not doing shit. Go actually do something. And that's I guess the way I kind of look at it. I think if you put, touching on what you just said, and we can kind of end on this, I think when you put positivity out there, when you put good feelings and you try to make a difference, that's the energy you're going to put out, and that's what you're going to get back. And I don't think you can fail in that sense. I think if you're doing like we're doing things like this,
you're putting your best foot out there.
I think there's no failing.
Yeah,
there's no failing in that sense.
It does, and it does, like, it creates character and passion for other people. You're giving them that dignity. I mean, Ryan going in there, or you going in there, and having the interviews with these people that have been in the program, and Brenda asked Dale if it was okay if she went explain the podcast.
Yeah,
it probably made Dale feel pretty good knowing that there's potential.
She was stoked.
Somebody could hear what she went through.
Yep, exactly.
And that's, it's just, and that was such a small conversation, but if it could affect her life and she shared that with her friends, that's the kind of thing we're trying to go for.
Yep, we're going to put positivity out there, and that's what we're hoping to get back out of this. I think about this a lot, and it's just, you say you have those friends who are always angry, or you have those friends who are always uptight, and those are, weirdly enough, the friends who always seem to get in the most confrontations, because whatever you're putting out is what you're going to get back.
Yeah.
And what we want to put out is positivity, looking for answers, trying to make things better, looking at a brighter side of things. I mean, this is it's a terrible topic as far as what people are going through, but we can help, and let's do what we can to help.
Yeah, definitely.
So thank you. The next, just so everybody knows, the next for Gateway of Hope, their next fundraiser is going to be Ride into History, July 22nd, 23rd. There's the Friday is going to be like a cruise in with classic cars, some musicians. It's entrance by donation. They'll have some food. It's going to be at the Kwantlen parking lot. And then the Saturday is a ride. I'm not sure exactly the route, but this is for just riders of motorcycles and their passengers. And then that night there's a dinner and banquet at Milestone. So go to their webpage. All the information's there, gatewayofhope.com. And then there's a golf tournament September 1st, Tournament of Hope. So check that out.
We're definitely going to be in the golf tournament.
We'll be at the
there.
golf tournament for sure. So
get on our Facebook page, Happy Naughts. Go get at www.happynaughts.com. Follow us Twitter, Instagram @HappyNaughts. We're just trying to grow and expand and contribute to situations like this as much as we can.
And if you know situations, things that you see going on that people are making a positive change in people's lives, let us know, and it's something that we would love to look into and promote.
Be there to help ourselves as well.
Twitter and Instagram @HappyNaughts, and YouTube page is Happy Naughts as well. And this stuff will be up. We're going to have an iTunes page by the end of the weekend, and this podcast will be up early in the week. And so we will thank everybody for tuning in, and we will see you for the next episode. And this is Happy Naughts saying, don't worry, be happy.
Here's a little song I wrote. You might want to sing it note for note. Don't worry, be happy.